So, how's it going, Michael?
It's going great. How have you been?
I've been good. I'm really excited to be able to put a face to a name.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I can't wait. February 14th is going to be more than just Valentine's Day this year, isn't it?
It sure is. We're so excited about the forum. I've been talking about it with a lot of people, and we're just really excited about the opportunity to come together as a community and talk about our story and what it means to be a nonprofit in this community.
Yeah. Well, the story I think is shifting and evolving for a lot of us these days.
Yeah. Well, can you talk more about that? How do you see it shifting and evolving?
Yeah. Well, it's playing out in so many different ways, Ami. So everybody's hearing about storytelling in one form or another, and how important it is as a nonprofit or as an institution to tell your story. What often I think gets overlooked is really thinking about, are you telling the right story for the future you're trying to create? So many organizations right now are dealing with disruption, reinvention, having to find a new way to connect and be relevant to their audiences. And of course, things like social media has really pumped up the volume on this. The drive for innovation is also amplifying this. There's kind of this convergence of a lot of different factors that make telling your story more and more important than ever. And I think nonprofits, there's some unique dimensions to it that often kind of get overlooked or forgotten about.
How did this become so exciting for you, and how did you get so passionate about storytelling in your own world?
Well, I come to this myself. I mean, I started as a social entrepreneur in the late 90s. I co-founded two nonprofits before even the age of 23, and it was an interesting time. This was during the dot-com boom, so there was the parallel .org sort of movement that emerged, and so I was involved with a couple technology-oriented nonprofits. The first was focused on volunteerism, and the second was focused on the digital divide. And I had a lot of early success. It was a time where a lot of opportunities that were opening up. But I also came out of those experiences, and we had, funding from Ford and Rockefeller, and got a lot of attention. It was kind of heady times. Yet I came away somewhat dissatisfied from those early experiences. My heart was there, but I felt like something was missing from the conversation. And it took me a while to figure out, to actually put a name on it. And as I went on sort of that path of trying to figure out what was missing from the conversation, it brought me back to storytelling. My background is as a cultural anthropologist, so I've been fascinated with culture my entire life. And I started to realize how much culture and identity was in a way the thing that was missing from our dialogue as nonprofits or in the process of social change. That the whole businessification of nonprofits, which is really important, efficiency, effectiveness, those are wonderful things, data, wonderful things, but they're just poker ante. There's something deeper at play, which is, I always think of it as emotional capital is the drivetrain of the social sector. And I get worried that the pendulum sometimes, I think, has swung a little too far on one direction, where we lose sight that there's something deeper that drives our work, and how do we tell that story in a way that others can see what we see, in a way that others will identify and relate to what we're doing. And that's been the holy grail, trying to unpack that and explore it and make that practical for organizations is what I've spent the last decade focused on.
Right. I'd love to hear a little bit more about this idea of, how this complements this idea of being data-driven, because as you kind of alluded to just now, that's a big push, both internally and externally for nonprofits, that we're supposed to have results and data and numbers, and you see that everywhere. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts on, well, how do these two things rub against each other and complementing one another?
Yeah, it's such a great question, Ami, and I know it's on the minds of a lot of folks. So first of all, I just want to say I think it's an artificial distinction, and we don't do ourselves much service perpetuating that distinction. And let me explain it. Actually, there's a great oh, now my mind's going to blank. There's a great quote that says that stories are just data with a soul. That's from Brene Brown, right? Stories are data with a soul. So that's a way to think about all of this data and information that we're collecting. They're just numbers, but they become something more when we attach a story to it. Same thing happens when you look at a set of financials. You can look at a balance sheet or a profit and loss statement. They're just numbers, 1s and 7s and 8s and 9s. They mean nothing until you attach the story of what do those numbers actually signify, what trends, what insights, what patterns. And so that's how we need to be thinking about the data that we're collecting, and that the process of storytelling in many ways is really more about pattern recognition, of recognizing what are the stories that we're inhabiting right now. And then how do we make those stories more accessible, relatable, and approachable to our audiences? So sometimes you need just the numbers in order to tell that story. There's also lots of examples of nonprofits who are realizing they need to bring that story to life with video, with pictures, with first-person narratives, as well as even just thinking about the way you frame your story in a way that becomes less adversarial or combative, which I think is one of unfortunately, one of the biggest obstacles that a lot of social change organizations face today.
Yeah. And so do you think that for some people this ability to tell the story is innate, or do you think we can all learn it in some way? Because I know as somebody who has been part of social change organizations for a long time, I tend to get a little combative in my when I can be an advocate, and so I wonder how much I can really change the way I frame that, and how much is just innate to people and how they come across in the world.
Yeah. So I hear there's really two questions that I hear. So let me answer both of them. The first one, which is this question about, are some people storytellers and other people not? Like, what's the distinction? And I'll put it to you this way. When you were 5 years old, you were the world's greatest freaking storyteller. Were you not?
I'm sure I was. Right?
And you've got kids, and I don't know what age they are right now, but I'm sure when they were really young, you didn't have to teach them how to tell a story. They literally drank at the faucet of story. They wanted to hear stories. They wanted to read stories. They wanted to be told stories. It was just like, that's the sponge. It's how we make sense and meaning of the world. So we're hardwired for storytelling. The funny thing is as we get older, somehow our ability to naturally be in the flow of just telling stories, we become more self-conscious about it. So we're all telling stories all the time. If you've ever been on a job interview, you were telling a story. If you've ever been on a date, you were telling a story. If you've ever been in front of an audience doing a presentation, you were telling a story. So part of really what we're here to teach and what we're going to be exploring at the forum is how to become more conscious of what story you're telling. So with that in mind, let's go to the second part of your question, which is, this piece about telling an adversarial story. And I have a lot of sympathy in my heart around this. I really do. And part of it is my background, I think, from both having started in the nonprofit sector and also being an anthropologist. Because I think for a lot of us who are doing social change work, there is this fundamental pain, this core trauma that we have, which is, Ami, don't you see what I see? Don't you see? Don't you think this is so important? Why aren't we paying more attention to this? Right? There's this part in us, there's a pain of what we're witnessing, and we want to get others to witness what we've witnessed in a way that they're inspired or motivated to care as much as we are.
What do you think we can expect from the forum on February 14th, Reimagining the nonprofit sector?
Yeah, so what we're going to be doing at this forum is it's going to be an incredibly immersive experience. We believe storytelling is not a spectator sport. So the way that you learn this is by doing and interacting with each other. We make it really safe. but you will be interacting in a whole range of different exercises and formats where you're going to explore your own personal story, you're going to explore your organization, your nonprofit story, and we're also going to be exploring the cultural story, the community story of Marin. Because the vision that you have at CVNL and what you're doing and recognizing the importance as a sector to come together and to go through this exercise of pattern recognition. What are some of the underlying themes and the most important issues affecting our community, and how do we start to talk about them in ways that kind of get past the impasses, that get past the moralizing, that get past the judgment, and that allow us to make new connections with each other in unexpected ways. So there's 3 things I would say that people can expect. 1, you're going to learn some really practical tools. We introduce frameworks and exercises that you can take back to your organization and you could apply with your own teams. Number 2 is we're going to be very provocative. And you guys have given us a lot of permission, and in partnership with you, of designing an agenda where we're going to talk about things that people often aren't talking about, but it's kind of the thing that's on everybody's minds, that when folks are sitting around having a cocktail with their colleagues, they're going, well, this is really kind of the frustration or the challenges of the nonprofit story. We're going to go there, right? And then 3 is you're going to walk away having experienced a profound new level of connections. The people you're going to meet, fellow peers, people that might be acquaintances, people you've never met before, but because of our format, you'll walk away feeling like you really know people in a new way. And our hope is that this whole process really sets a framework and a foundation that supports really what you're doing as you step into really a new year, and you've got a big upcoming anniversary with your work as you're looking both backwards and forwards as an organization and as a community that can be part of an ongoing dialogue of really looking at the reimagining what are the new nonprofit storylines.
Great. I love that, because just about half an hour ago we were talking about how as an organization what we really care about are those connections.
Yeah.
And what we care about is that people are talking to one another as individuals, as organizations, as a community, and that's what we want to represent for this community, is creating those connections for people. So I think this is going to be a great kickoff to what we think of as kind of the next steps in helping us create those connections for people.
Absolutely. And I would say to anybody who's listening, if you're thinking about coming to this event, I'm here to say it will defy your expectations. And what I also want to do is just really acknowledge and give a hats off to you all as an organization, what you're putting together for this program and the cost that you're offering it at. It is an incredible value of what people are going to get out of this. In a very practical way, as well as something that is going to be some seeds that will continue to blossom for months and years to come, because we're dealing in a very disruptive and a new environment that we're all dealing with right now, and figuring out how to tell your own story in a way that you can really be in better relationship with other people is really a journey that we're all on together, and I really think represents the path towards how the nonprofit sector evolves in the future that we all want together.